Now, disagreements between parties involved in Brexit negotiations are continuing, but little progress is being made. DUP leader Arlene Foster, British Prime Minister Theresa May and Taoiseach Leo Varadkar remain deadlocked over border issues with Northern Ireland. So are we going to see a decision happening anytime soon? Joining me with that story and everything else this morning is Kevin Doyle from the Irish Independent and Director of the Irish Academy of Public Relations, Ellen Gunning. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Kevin, at this stage, time is ticking. This 14th of December deadline is looming. Do you think a deal can be done? Do you think this deal that was supposedly agreed upon can be salvaged?
I think it probably can, but I think the DUP are going to look for a little bit more time in the limelight. They're getting their base, reassuring their base that the Union isn't being separated, the Union being the United Kingdom rather than the EU. They've no problem with the EU being disseminated at all. I think it can, but I think Theresa May has made a monumental mess of it. I think Dublin is going to have to perhaps give a couple of inches on this just to get it over the line. But the essence of the deal that's there will stay. What I'm hearing is that the Dublin government will, that Leo Varadkar will essentially allow some sort of a clarification be added to the text that would say something along the lines of the EU respects the integrity of the United Kingdom, and that might be... And
that would suffice for Arlene Foster?
The DUP's concern is basically that what was proposed on Monday that they apparently didn't know about was a border in the Irish Sea, which they've always said they couldn't live with because it's a step to a united Ireland. Maybe a line that says, oh, well, don't worry, the UK still exists, might do. That's what we're actually talking about here.
When Arlene Foster spoke yesterday, I think a lot of people would have been quite surprised and shocked by her comments that we didn't get to see the text of this deal because the Irish government didn't want us to. Does she actually really believe that? It seems so farcical. Or is she just trying to kind of galvanise support within the DUP base there by saying to them, look, we'll wave the United Ireland card and that'll get them all going again?
There were two really strange things that she said yesterday. One was that, and the second was the use of the word unequivocal. So the first was that the Irish government in some way was conspiring not to allow the DUP to see the text. I think Leo Varadkar has been very clear. We're on this side of the table with the EU and the UK government is on the other side of the table. He doesn't mind what happens over there. In fact, he's been very clear he doesn't care how they handle things. His job is to handle things on this side for Ireland. I think he's been very clear about that. And I'm not convinced that she actually believed herself that the Irish government had any part to play in her not seeing the text. I do find it surprising that Theresa May didn't share it with her, but that's another issue. But the second thing that I found really unusual was the use of the word unequivocal. She said that the Taoiseach had said unequivocally that there would be no change to the text or whatever. And she said, well, I need to tell him that we are also, I'm paraphrasing, we are also unequivocal in our defence of the Union. And I thought, but she's actually not negotiating. I think she's forgotten what role she plays in the negotiations. She's not actually negotiating with the Irish government. She's not negotiating with the EU. She's a vital part of propping up the UK government, but she's not a direct party to the deal. And I think maybe she has misplaced her importance in the negotiation. It's an interesting one.
I presume the hand that she is playing, Kevin, is, look, you need our support, Conservatives, you need our support, Theresa May, and if we don't get a deal that we're happy with, we're not giving that support and the whole government is going to collapse. Do you actually believe that she would follow through with that?
Yeah.
Because that is her playing hand here, isn't it?
And we understand confidence in supply arrangements probably better than they do in the UK. I think it was this day last week we were here talking about Francis Fitzgerald having stepped down because Fianna Fáil were threatening to collapse the government. It's a similar scenario. Arlene Foster could turn around and say, Theresa, I'm done. The problem for Arlene Foster is she does that is then all her power evaporates. There's a very strong likelihood of an election in the UK, and what comes back from that, who knows? It could be Theresa May. Well, probably won't be Theresa May because I think the Tories will oust her pretty quickly. But it could be the Conservatives with some other leader without the need for the DUP, or it could be Jeremy Corbyn, which would be the DUP's worst nightmare. So their hand is strong, but if they overplay it, they could end up with nothing. And that's the scenario they're looking at. And that probably is Theresa May's strength in this when she looks back at them and says, guys, we have to do something. And, you know, we're talking about the 14th and 15th as being the deadline. Well, actually, Friday by Friday we need to see strong movement on this, because the EU then has to go away and prepare all the paperwork for the European leaders when they're coming over. So it's not a simple thing of rocking up next week and going
on the 13th at midnight and saying,
yeah, we got a deal.
This done.
I mean, and that's how Northern Ireland politics has forever worked, is at 3 or 4 in the morning the deal is done, but the EU won't do that.
Won't work like that. Was it interesting yesterday to listen to Davis speaking in the House of Commons and saying, actually, this phrase, no regulatory divergence, is a bit of a mouthful. You know what? All of the UK can actually sign up to that. Will the hardline Brexiteers buy that? Because what was the point of leaving the EU in the first place?
That was actually the point I was going to make to you. I think it was fascinating. And I actually think, wouldn't that be a wonderful solution if they could find a way to do it so that the UK actually leaves the EU, they have Brexit, the Brexiteers can say we've won, the people who wanted to stay in the EU can say we've won. Really nothing changes except the optics. There are some changes, but effectively you have this regulatory agreement or convergence, so we're all operating under the same rules. It's probably the ideal solution. I can't see it working, and I was amazed that he threw it in almost as a throwaway comment.
Yeah, it was very casual, which made me absolutely question, are they just testing the waters here? Are they waiting to see what the hardline Brexiteers are going to say in response to this? Because obviously the idea of going for Brexit in the first place was that there wouldn't be regulatory divergence.
I thought it was interesting that he was either trying to calm the waters or, exactly as you say, he was just tossing it out there to see what comes back, what kind of ripples will it cause.
They're walking the whole thing back. I mean, they've said all along we don't want to be in the customs union, and now what they want to be in is the customs union by any other name. So there is an attempt, I think, to walk it back and soften people up for that idea, and that's the reassurance that they'll offer the DUP is, well, actually, you're just getting the deal first, and everyone else will get it when we're done.
Changes afoot, Ellen, in the public service. Is it going to be the case that we're all going to be working that little bit longer?
Oh, yes, and isn't it wonderful? I'm a fan, I must admit. I was reading this morning that actually the changes came about because if you retire at 65, which you must, you apparently now as a civil servant have to sign on the dole for a year before you can get your pension, which is daft. So this is what actually drove it. But I personally thought, fantastic. I've never understood why somebody decides for you at 65 that you should stop working.
So the idea is that compulsory redundancy, or not redundancy, retirement rather, at 65 will no longer be the case. You'll get the option, just the option.
That's exactly it. You may choose to retire. And an awful lot of public servants, bear in mind, retire at 55. They go for these early retirement packages. So they're long retired by the time 65 comes along. But there are a lot of people at 65 who feel they still have a lot to contribute, love working and would want to continue. And I think it's a great opportunity for them. I'm a big fan. 70, roll it on, 75 if possible.
Kevin's rolling his eyes to heaven, and so Kevin, I'm looking to get out of here at 50. What we're going to see here is that the public pension is going to eventually come in line too, and that nobody will be able to claim that until they're 70 years of age, and ultimately we'll all have to keep working. Is that where this is going?
Yeah, essentially the pension age has already risen to 66, which has caused this anomaly. So there's about 5,000 people a year stuck in this no man's land where they're forced to give up work. They have to pretend for a year, for 12 months, that they're looking for work, because that's the only way you qualify for the social welfare payments. The job seekers allowance is to actually be seeking a job. So they're stuck there. Over time, that's going to rise to 67, and within a decade, it's going to be 68 before you're getting the pension. So what Pascal Donoghue today is going to try and head that off by saying, well, do you know what, you can stay working if you want. I don't know, maybe it's an age thing, but I wouldn't, no way I want to work till I'm 70.
Do you know what, Kevin, you've had a very difficult couple of weeks between Francis Fitzgerald, Leo Varadkar, and now the Brexit crisis. Kevin just needs a holiday, that's what it is. And then you'll be happy to work to 70.
Maybe.
Kevin and Ellen, thank you so much for joining us this morning.